Good evening, kia ora, and let me greet you with the universal salutations of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Shoka Adam Patel, and you are here at a MEND webinar, Christchurch Remembered, 51 Souls, the Loss, the Lessons, and the Legacy. For those of you that are not aware, MEND stands for Muslim Engagement and Development, and we are a community-inspired, community-run and community-funded organization that is passionate in tackling Islamophobia in this country here in the UK, but our heart beats for the universal and globe wherever any form of atrocities or hatred arises. So New Zealand is a country of breathless beauty. It's awe-inspiring scenery. It has majestic mountains, and the people of New Zealand are known for their adventurousness and their kindness on the whole. If the country's beauty wasn't already renowned, I'm sure many of you listening tonight will be aware of how it was imprinted in the minds of the world with Peter Jackson's trilogy, Lord of the Rings. And in fact, I have read somewhere that the country is so beautiful, because I myself haven't been fortunate enough to visit it, that when the British first stumbled upon it, they thought they had landed in the Garden of Eden, as described in the Bible. So it's a country that is synonymous with calm and beauty. Exactly 2 years ago to the day, that beauty, that serenity, that calm, that fellowship almost was shattered, because on the best of days, at the best of times, in the best of places, performing the best of worship, at the Friday prayers, Salatul Jummah, 50 gunshots were fired and 51 souls lost their lives. But on that day, more than the 51 people that lost their lives, as the national media of the country described it, an innocence was lost. So how we're going to try to see today is a country of merely 5 million people suffered its most atrocious and worst case of terrorism in its entire history. Yes, we are here to remember and honor those that have passed away, and we will ensure by the end of the show, we would have mentioned each and every individual that passed away to a better place in honor, to respect and honor them. But we'll also try to understand the landscape of New Zealand prior to this happening, the aftermath of it, and what lessons and what legacy has the massacre left for the rest of society to learn from. And today, to discuss these matters, I'm so sincerely, we hear this every time when people present guests, but I'm sincerely humbled and honored to have three extremely esteemed guests, two joining us from New Zealand, from the other side of the world, and one much closer to home. The first up I'd like to introduce to you is Brother MOHAMMAD THOMPSON. He is from New Zealand, and it would be fair to say he is a real stalwart of the New Zealand Muslim community. He has been a chairman for an organization called Voice of Islam for close to 2 decades, just under 20 years, where he has dedicated his life in promoting the peace and the positivity that Islam affords him, and also hundreds and millions of Muslims around the globe. So Brother MOHAMMAD THOMPSON, first of all, I'd like to welcome you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh.
Hope my impression of a New Zealand greeting was not too off there.
No, it was very good, alhamdulillah, but I think you overrated me. Definitely.
If anything, not so much. Secondly, again, I am very, very humbled to introduce our guest, Brother FARID AHMED. Now, Brother FARID AHMED is originally from Bangladesh. He has been residing in New Zealand for close to 30 years. But I think it would be fair to say, after the Christchurch massacre, he's been residing in the hearts of millions of Muslims across the world, with the mannerism which we will learn about in throughout the course of this interview, of his actions after the horrendous incidents. He describes himself as a teacher, voluntarily assisting in religious classes. He's also a healer with his homeopathic medicines that he does. He's also a uniter, again, voluntarily getting people married when he's got a bit of time. And also he's a da'i, which is an inviter to Islam as well. So Brother FARID AHMED, Jazakallah khair for joining us. Thank you so much and welcome.
Walaikum assalam, and also to all the listeners. Our heart-touching salam from here, from me, from Brother Thompson, and all the Muslims in Christchurch in particular. In our prayer and well wish for everyone, inshallah.
Jazakallah. Thank you for your warm greeting. And finally, our third guest is much closer to home, but equally as eminent. We're extremely grateful and honored to have the esteemed Professor of Journalism, Professor Brian Cathcart. Now, the professor himself is at the moment teaching, I think, as in an organization that he helped set up, which is at Kingston University, the journalism school there. He's also, I think, run the entire gauntlet of positions in media, editor and sub-editors for many independent newspapers. He's still writing for the Byline Times, and he is working tirelessly to achieve some kind of order and accountability of the press that causes a lot of tension in certain cases and a lot of conversations in others. So, Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a great pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to start, first of all, with Brother Mohammed Thompson, with yourself. We hear on the day 2 years ago that the lives that were lost included individuals from Pakistan, from India, from Bangladesh. We also had Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Afghanistan, and Somalia. So it seems that the community is an extremely diverse community. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Muslim community in New Zealand, in Christchurch, and how long they've been there and their backgrounds, etc.?
Yes, Jazakallah khair. There's also some local Kiwis who were killed as well. So New Zealanders.
New Zealanders as well.
Yeah, so the New Zealand has become very multicultural, and not just with Muslims, but throughout. But especially in the Muslim area, there's many nationalities. Even like the Muslim school where my children went to, there was over 40 something different nationalities at that school, from all over the place. And alhamdulillah, it's New Zealand, as we know, has been a very peaceful place. The communities are usually mixing together quite well. They're very though there's some dominant nationalities of the Muslims, but generally we don't have the situation like I come from Australia originally, where they have mosque where they say the Turkish mosque, the Albanian mosque and things like that. Here they don't have that sort of designations. It's a mosque where we'll come and pray and things like that.
Okay, so I just want to get onto that point actually. So after the incident, Brother Thompson, we saw a real outpouring of grief. People were out on the streets, laying flowers. There was emotional rawness, people crying. We even saw the traditional haka being performed in honor. What relationship did the Muslim community have with the wider community? So in this country, myself, I wasn't born here, I grew up here in the beginning. It would be fair possibly to say there was a little bit of insularism. The Muslim community kept themselves to themselves until they found their feet. In New Zealand, is that a similar scenario, or is there a lot of wider engagement? I'll ask you that first, and then I'll come to Brother Farid.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, here it's a bit more open, and more so since March 15th. And alhamdulillah, the outpouring, it started from the Muslims, and Brother Farid was one of the ones instigating in that sort of thing, the reaction that the Muslims gave out. And then the non-Muslims, the Kiwis, reacted in even much more kindness. Like I was down there the week after, and I'll never forget the Friday prayer on Hagley Park a week after, facing the Al Noor Mosque, 5,000 Muslims from all over, 15,000 non-Muslims there for Friday prayer, many of the ladies wearing hijab and things like that. The world media was there. It was just unbelievable, and it showed the world this is how humanity should be.
Brother Farid, I just want to go to before March the 15th, if that's okay, is what kind of relationship did you think the Muslim community had with the wider community? This is prior to the incident. What was the case then in terms of engagement with the wider community?
Brother Thompson, or you were asking me?
Sorry, excuse me, Brother Farid.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The relationship was quite good. Time to time when bad thing happened in the world in different places, then we had seen time to time some tension. For example, after 9/11, we saw some tension. We saw some wider community people were angry because what they saw and what they heard. But in New Zealand, the media, quickly they took very positive role. They wanted to remove the misunderstanding, and they have given lots of coverage about the truth of Islam, 5 pillars of Islam, and how actually Islam stands for peace.
Sorry, Brother Farid, is this before the March the 15th incidents? The media
this is before March the 15th. I'm saying that an example after 9/11. So, and then when things happen in some other countries, time to time we have seen that some, tension developed, but those tensions were dealt with properly. Everybody worked nicely. We tried to have as many open days as possible. We, had dialogues with people, interfaith community. They were very active. And government wanted to make sure that the true message of Islam is out there so that people know that the true Islam has nothing to do with the violence. So we were sort of okay. We did not have any major incidents. We had a good communication going on, and we could never imagine that someone will come with hate and will start killing people like birds.
Amazing. So you're saying there was a lot of engagement, there was dawah work, there was interfaith work, possibly political engagement, and you're telling us that the media and the government were quite active in promoting a positive message of the Muslim community and Islam.
Correct.
Professor Brian Cathcart, would you like to see that here in the UK?
Well, I mean, I'm an expert on, if I'm an expert on anything, on the press. And I think one of the things that most depresses me is the lack of diversity in the UK press. So and the lack of knowledge, the simple lack of knowledge, but it goes with the lack of diversity. I think if you have people in your newsroom who are Muslims, you have a ready access to information and understanding about Muslims. And also, I think you see a dimension of Muslims or any other minority. You see dimensions of them that are not obvious. They're not caricatures. You see real people. And I think that's one of the great weaknesses of the UK press, is that, with rare exceptions, most of the papers most of the big news organizations are very undiverse, and not just in terms of ethnic minorities and religious minorities, but also they are very metropolitan. They are very white. They are very particular kinds of university educated people. It's a very restricted group. So yes, I mean, we need certainly in this country a great deal more exchange and engagement between our media and the Muslim community, and indeed other minorities.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. So diversity, I think, works both ways, and I think the community themselves need to be a little bit more active in pursuing careers in journalism, etc. Brother Mohammed Thompson, so we've heard from yourself and Brother Farid here that the community was engaged with the wider community. There wasn't a real, from what I'm gauging today, a sense of animosity. In the UK, if I just take you here, we've seen a real rise in hate crime. Recent reports that were published say that over 50% of religiously motivated hate crimes in the UK are committed against Muslims. And when you think Muslims only make up 5% of the population, that is quite a scary statistic, especially for people like myself who have children in this country. I want to just find, and I think Brother Farid has already alluded this question is to Brother Mohammed Thompson, was there any inkling, was there any iota of animosity towards the Muslim? Was there any threats that had already happened, or people engaged with the police thinking, look, if we're not careful, something was going to happen? Or did this come out completely from the blue?
Well, there has been some, sort of threats or suspect of things happening, and these had been reported to the police over the years, but nothing sort of really concrete and things like that. Unfortunately, like to a certain degree, the New Zealand police and those sort of organisations were always looking in one direction, not the other, to a certain degree. And this was, the Muslims were always from overseas. What they see from overseas, they sort of think there's some sort of issue there, so they think that there might be some growing like that in New Zealand as well. So that the authorities were looking a little bit more to one side and not looking to the other side.
Brother Farid, if it's okay now, we're going to go to that fateful day. So yourself and your beloved wife, Sister Husna, make your way to Friday prayers. You go your separate ways to perform the wudu, the ablution, and go to your respective prayer halls. If you can, in your own words, and please feel free to take as long as you like, is for an individual like yourself, for those that are not aware, Brother Farid is actually has come close to death before, when he was run over and has been paralyzed and is wheelchair bound. When you were in that prayer hall, we've heard lots of accounts of what happened. What was going through your mind at that particular time? If you can describe the emotions that you were feeling of what was happening around you, and what were you thinking? And if you can answer that first, and then I'll ask the second part of the question.
Inshallah, I'll answer that. Yeah, so the moment I realized that it was gunshot, because I was in the classroom and I was going to the main hall where the most casualties were, and I didn't go straight away because I saw one of the brother, I knew him for a long time and he was diagnosed with cancer. So I wanted to hug him and made some dua with him, and then I thought I would go, and in between started when some brothers were rushing out to my room, and then they were running through the exit door. I saw some of them were limping, I saw some of them were bleeding, and that time I was really sure that it was a gunman, but I did not know exactly how many gunmen were. I thought that probably they were more, they were a group. And the first thing came to my mind was, what is happening? What is going on? I was trying to figure out, but then the more thoughts came in, and it sort of overwhelmed me, because I was thinking that it was probably the last day for me on the earth. I was thinking about Imam, I was thinking about other worshippers, I was thinking about my wife, other ladies, other children, and also I was thinking about me. But very soon, I felt very, very relaxed. I even smiled at one point, and I was thinking in my mind, and I was saying to Allah that, Allah, I don't complain, because after my accident 21 years ago, my medical team advised that my survival rate was only 7%. So I said, Allah, you gave me 21 long years. Why should I complain? So, if it happens today, I'm ready to meet you. So I felt very calm, and I was certain in my mind that I will receive a shot. So, you know, I was not moving, I was staying there, and I was not thinking of rushing or running away. But when I saw after a minute or so, when I saw that exit door was, you know, quiet, and, you know, everybody who could come out, you know, had come out, then I wanted to make a move. So I moved myself, pushed my wheelchair very, very gently. You know, on one hand, I was not trying to commit suicide by deliberately staying back. And on the other hand, I was not willing to run away, because I had complete trust in Allah that only if Allah accept my movements, only I will die then, otherwise no one can kill me. وَمَا كَانَ لِنَفْسٍ وَمَا وَمَا كَانَ لِنَفْسٍ أَن تَمُوتَ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ كِتَابًا مُؤَجَّلًا. I was remembering that when we will die, exactly that moment is written in Allah's record, and unless Allah permits, people can harm us, people can injure us, people can try to kill us, but our soul will not go out unless Allah permits. So I had that trust in Allah, so I moved out gently. And then I managed to go out, and I was hiding behind my car. And from there, I was listening to, you know, shots, and every shot was feeling like it was going through my heart, and it was signaling me that one more person is dead.
I pray that none of us or anybody listening or anybody in the world ever has to go through that situation. But if we ever are, I pray that we have the state of mind and the serenity and the peace that you have just expressed at that situation. Completely remarkable. You're right, you don't know how you're going to respond to a situation like that, but how you have done was a testimony to who you are, Brother Farid. It's absolutely incredible. The second part that I was going to come to in the question is possibly a little even bit more difficult to answer, but I'm going to use your own words. That there came a time, a few minutes, I suspect, after the description that you've just given us, when you said yourself that you had become both a father and a mother to your 15-year-old daughter, because we saw images of you waiting for your wife, and then you were told that you had lost your wife. What were the emotions running through your mind at that time?
When I was told that my wife was no longer coming home, I was actually waiting in the street outside the mosque on Dean's Avenue, just outside the police barricade. And when I say that I was both father and mother, that part when I came home and my daughter came from school, and she didn't know what was going on because our school was shut down. And one of my relatives who picked her up, I instructed not to tell her anything. I said, you know, this job is on me. Even though I know it is very hard, very difficult, but I am going to tell my daughter by myself. So two of us, we can connect and we can make a team. So again, when I will answer you in two parts briefly. One part, when I heard a police officer, he was originally from England, but you know, we were friends with him. He previously worked with Scotland Yard. And so he actually telephoned me because he was on that team at that moment. So he knew my wife very, very well. So he saw me in the TV, you know, when I was on the live, and he realized that I was waiting outside. So he telephoned me, and then he said to me, Farid, don't wait outside. Go home, and it will be probably the longest night in your life. So I got the message. And then he said, I am telling you because I am very certain. That time was also very, very difficult. I never expected that I would hear a message like this. Suddenly, I felt like that I was losing everything. I felt like the earth was shrinking and the earth was giving away. That is the time again. I quickly, to gain some control, I surrendered myself totally to Allah. And I prayed that Allah guide me. I don't know what to do. Then, in a moment, a verse came to my mind that Yaqub alayhi salam, when he heard about the bad news about his son Yusuf alayhi salam, he simply said, "Fasabrun jameel, wallahul musta'an." He said, I will take the good patience, a patience without making any complaint, and Allah is enough for me. So that feeling came, and with that, I felt, some ground I had underneath me. Then the human weakness came again. Who is going to look after me? Because I am a paraplegic and I used to depend a lot on my wife for last 21 years. But then again, another verse came to my mind. In Quran, Surah Yusuf, Prophet Yusuf, when he was in trouble, he prayed to Allah, Anta waliyyi fid dunya wal akhirah. Oh Allah, you are my protector. You are my guardian in this life and in next life. And that quickly gave me a sense in me. And I said, hey, my wife is gone, but my protector, Allah, he never dies. He is still there. And then he is going to look after me. So why should I worry? So with this kind of guidance, I gained my energy, and then I decided, no, I'm not going to cry. I have job to do. I have a daughter to look after. I have some other family members to guide them. And then I started planning. And then afterwards, I came home. When I came home, I was waiting for my daughter. And it was probably the most hardest thing for me, that what I was going to tell my daughter. What word could I use to make her feel less painful? Again, my mind gave up, and then I surrendered to Allah. I said, Allah, without your guidance, I can't do anything. I just give up. And then I prayed. She came, and then, she came and she asked me the question, where is my mother? And the answer came to me was very simple. I said, she's with Allah. And I am so thankful to Allah for giving me those words. Because if I said she was killed, it would have been more painful for me, painful for her. If I said she suffered, those things Allah saved me from saying. And I could give her the message. She understood. And then when I needed to comfort her, then I had to say that from now, I'm your father and I'm your mother. We'll just change our role and we have to move on.
Your strength, Brother Farid, is incredible. And I pray the Almighty continues to give you the steadfastness and the strength.
Amen.
Amen.
I just want to follow on, Brother Farid. There's another quote. It is, I lost my wife, but I don't hate the killer. I don't have any grudge against him. I have forgiven him and I am praying for him. I love him if I am honest. That was Brother Farid Ahmed. Where does this strength come from, Brother Farid? And a sensitive question, your wife, whom you knew very well, if the roles were reversed, what would her sentiments have been?
Could you repeat the last part? Could you repeat the last part?
Your wife, Sister Husna, as you knew her very well, what would her sentiments have been in terms of what kind of personality was she? How would she have responded to such a tragedy?
So I will answer the last bit first. After the terrible accident on me, when I was run over by a car, I was in the intensive care for 14 days. I was in induced coma, and my wife was with me all the time, and she was being told again and again by the medical team, go home, he's not going to survive. Even at one stage, one doctor said, find another husband, he's not going to survive. But my wife did not leave me. When I woke up, when I came out of the coma, at one stage she was, smiling about the man who ran over me. And she said, he must had a bad day. That's her. That's her. She didn't hold any grudge. The second part is that where did I find the strength to say that I don't hate you? It came from my faith, Brother Shaukat. First of all, according to my faith, Allah says that Allah has created human being from Adam and Eve. And then Allah made us nations and tribes, لِتَعَارَفُوا, so that we can know one another and we can complement one another. I take that verse very, very seriously. From this verse, I strongly believe that Islam and Allah is teaching me that mankind are really a family, human brothers and human sisters.
You have combated hate with love, and we pray that you and your daughter and your family are protected for forevermore, and your beloved wife is in the highest abode in paradise, inshallah. And we firmly believe that. But you have been, as you say, a real testimony to others of challenging all forms of the grievous form of hate with love and compassion and kindness, and that achieves a lot more in majority of cases. Thank you so much for that, brother. I can imagine that must have not been easy for you. Brother Mohammed Thompson, when a tragedy unfolds and a nation is under duress, it's natural for them to look for a leader, somebody to take the burden, to carry the burden, etc. Somebody who speaks on their behalf. From this side of the world, we saw your Prime Minister really rise to the occasion. Her promptness, her robustness, the humility, the sincerity. Was that something that helped in the healing process, Brother Mohammed Thompson?
Alhamdulillah, definitely. Sister Adern, as we call her now, she did a great job mothering the nation. I think she was the person for the time. I think anyone else who was could have been in that position of it wouldn't have been the same. She did a fantastic role of bringing the country together. She showed with her humility, her love, genuine care, and upsetness of the whole thing, and was sincere, and everyone saw that throughout the world.
What words adequately express the pain and suffering of 50 men, women and children lost, and so many injured? What words capture the anguish of our Muslim community being the target of hatred and violence? What words express the grief of a city that has already known so much pain? I thought there were none. And then I came here and was met with this simple greeting. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you.
Professor, at this stage, we saw the response of Prime Minister Ardern. What do you think the leaders of our countries could learn from her response, and what did you think and make out of her response to the tragedy? Professor Cathcart?
Well, it is, as you say, an extraordinarily inspiring tale. And let me just say that very moving account, Mr. Ahmed, very touching, but also inspiring. And I think, you know, you take that and you take the response of Prime Minister Ardern. I mean, it's a kind of model, isn't it? It's about empathy, and it's such a pity that it's not instinctive elsewhere. Our experience here is sadly extremely different.
I just want to now go to a little bit about the findings. I think, Brother Mohammed Thompson, you alluded to the Royal Commission report after the Christchurch attack. So we're moving on from the day immediately aftermath. The report has come out. Prior to the attack, the report concluded, the gunman had posted a lot of troubling things online. He had legally obtained a gun license, and he had carried out reconnaissance missions outside the mosques. You know, he had a drone outside Al-Nur Mosque, and he flew it. It was also reported that the gunman had accidentally shot himself and gone to the hospital, which wasn't even reported at the time. Yet the report concluded that nothing could have been done to stop this act. As you said yourself, and I think it was the brother of one of the victims, one of the martyrs, Aya al-Umari, whose brother Hassan al-Umari had passed away, has said that he felt that the radar, that he felt that the terrorists fell under the radar because the radar was looking in the wrong direction. We know the country, the community is diverse, and not everybody's going to have a uniform view. But overall, how was this report received when it said there was nothing that could have been done?
Do you want me to speak first, or
Yes,
Brother
please.
Fred?
Brother Mohammed Thompson.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum again. From my understanding, that wasn't quite right. I think the parameters of the Royal Commission had it that there were certain areas they couldn't go into too deeply. So they say for national security and things like that.
30 years, is it we'll have to wait?
Pardon?
Is it 30 years we'll have to wait before some of the other findings will be published?
Probably, yes. I think that's what it is, something like that, that part is disappointing. And I think, you know, again, like I said, that there was too much looking the wrong direction. But I think, inshallah, after this, that'll change. It was a bit disappointing where it sort of said that there was no one to blame. You know, but again, I sort of look at the way Farid looks at things. Yes, there's lessons to be learnt. We need to move on, and inshallah, they learn from this, and then it becomes more balanced and moving forward. And I think it has been because, you know, just some things happen recently. There seems to be a lot more cooperation, coordination, and you know, getting things moving along quickly and making sure that there is going to be safety, not just for Muslims, for all New Zealanders and anyone that comes here.
Community changed in any shape or form since the atrocities?
The Muslim community has changed. It's still, especially in Christchurch, Brother Farid will be able to tell us more on that. There's still a lot of suffering there because, you know, there's, you know, people are carrying injuries still, not just, you know, some physical, some have got, you know, fragments of bullets and things inside them that they're going to have forever. Others have got psychological things and things like that. So they're going to need like the constant help and assistance. And that's where it's the Muslim community needs to help, but it's also the non-Muslim community needs to, you know, be a covering, a blanket around us, like they did after the attacks, like they put, you know, surrounded the mosques and things like that, and, you know, watched over us while we prayed and those sort of things. So we need to, you know, help keep that going along. And that's another thing that, you know, yeah, healing process.
Professor Cathcart, you've been very patient. Thank you so much. I'm just going to bring you in. at this stage. Okay, so the atrocities are occurring, lives are being lost, and this is all being live streamed for people to watch in the comfort of their home, so to speak. Immediately, social media companies are pulling down the videos. The New Zealand police has announced that the manifesto that was printed should not be shared. And that is being universally, maybe not so, but being acknowledged and accepted and adhered to, except by the British press. The Mirror and the Daily Mail, two of our most established newspapers in this country, published an edited version of the video on their website the next day, while The Sun, the UK's most widely read newspaper, ran a GIF from the video on its homepage. In fact, the Mail even hosted the suspect's full manifesto for people to download if they wanted to. I just wanted to know from you, as a professor in journalism, is it acceptable for the media to share such footage in the spirit of news? And does such reporting also, in your view, inspire anything negative, or can it also be positive?
I think it's hard to imagine the mind frame of the editor who says that, you know, we stream this, we publish this. It is such toxic content. It is so vile. So, I mean, you know, irresponsible doesn't begin to describe it. So, you know, you're an editor and you decide, yeah, my readers need to see this. I need to inform my readers by showing them this. This is just not humane conduct at all. And I mean, I'm completely baffled that anybody thought that there was any merit in doing anything other than summarizing in, you know, highly critical terms, humane, sensible terms, what they saw, you know, in the manifesto. You know, it's scarcely believable to me, and I think, you know, it's a symptom. You've spoken of looking the wrong way. I think the UK press, in particular, has a very strong record of looking the wrong way. They have built up a pattern of hatred towards Muslims, some of the papers, and this was their reflex. They just, you know, had no barrier, showed no judgment in publishing these. So I can only condemn it. I can only say it's beyond my comprehension. I think that the response in the UK to the events in Christchurch was, in general, you know, to the experience we've had this morning of being inspired, of being, you know, obviously horrified by, but also of being inspired. And I think, you know, most of the country felt that way. It took time for I think the approach of the victim community and of the Prime Minister and the country as a whole. It took time for that to kind of filter through to British people, I think. But once they saw it, they were inspired by it. And I think, you know, there is a clear lesson there. What we have in our news media is a tradition, really, of bringing out the worst in people. And what we saw in New Zealand was you know, a deliberate effort to bring out the best in people. It was inspiring, and I think it touched many, many people here.
Just going back to what you said, and I think it'd be fair to say that many in the Muslim community in this country feel there is a bias reporting against the Muslims. There's somewhat negativity surrounding the Islam and Muslims per se, and I'm sure that could be a webinar for a different day, just that particular subject. But those of us that work with men, volunteer for men, you know, trying to say that not all the press are not bad. There's sometimes, you know, we can be a bit conspiratorial in our thinking, and, you know, we have to give the press a chance. But after this incident, what we saw was a real attempt by the media to understand the motives of the killers. I'm not going to mention his name, but understand the motives of why he did this. We saw a similar thing with Andre Breivik in Norway, where the court case, we had reams and reams of trying to understand what would make a European, if I may say so, commit such acts of terror. We saw that with the murder of Joe Cox as well in this country, the far-right extremists. What would make this loner, this gardener, the word, we'll come to that semantics a little bit later on in a question I have for you. Do you feel that this was the case, or again, is this the Muslim community being paranoid? And do they afford this to so-called Islamic terrorists, where it's just a madman, whereas there's a real attempt to understand the killer?
I think, I mean, you put your finger on it. The word that springs to mind is othering. That when an atrocity is perpetrated by people, you can readily other. You can readily say, they're not like us. Then you can park it there and, that's simple. When it's somebody, you can look in the mirror and they look just like you, it becomes more complicated. It seems that way. Now, that's a reflex. And I think, humans are given to reflexes, but it's one, coming back to it, I think about, as a journalist, I think about the responsibilities of editors. And, I feel that editors should rise above this reflex. They should be actually engaging on a different level with the nature of terrorist violence. So trying to understand killers is, perfectly legitimate and responsible journalistic activity. Dismissing killers and pigeonholing them and casually othering them in a way that attaches them to whole communities, that is not responsible journalism. It simply isn't. And that's what we've seen far too much of. So the tags, it's so easily, so readily resource to that you say, that newspapers would say this is a terrorist when it's a Muslim. But if it's a white killer, is it a lone wolf? Is it somebody with mental illness? Is it this? It's like they're looking for excuses. It may be more complicated than looking for excuses, but it's not good enough. It's not. To use a simple word, it's not fair, but it's also not good journalism. And Mr. Ahmed spoke, and I was very struck by this, of the need for us to have good information. That we're shaped by the information we receive. And so much of the information we receive, is filtered through journalism. And these are human decisions. These are not machines that are doing it. These are human decisions. Editors, journalists make, shape the information. And I think that, the levels of responsibility shown in parts of the British press, not by any means all of it, but parts and important parts, as you identify, of the British press, the levels of responsibility are just too low. There is insufficient thinking, there is insufficient empathy, there is insufficient care and fairness.
Thank you. Professor Cathcart mentioned the word responsible reporting. Brother Mohammed Thompson, very briefly, how was the reporting of the incident in New Zealand, as generally you would say?
In New Zealand, it seemed to, it affected the journalists really a lot as well, because the days and even weeks after the incident, well, terrorist attack is what it was. The journalists, you see them breaking down in tears as well, talking about it, and someone was sort of saying that, quietly, that they'd sort of maybe weren't reporting the way they should have been in the past, to a certain little bit, and now they're showing a more, I suppose, friendlier face towards the Muslim, and things like that. And I think that still has continued. You know, it hasn't been any, you know, there has been some not so, you know, good because all the overseas media, but the, you know, generally the reporting in New Zealand has been very good, and has continued to be that way.
I am booking my tickets to New Zealand now. I'm going to come reside over there with you.
Well, you have to wait till COVID. Our borders are closed.
Brother Farid, overall, your experience with the media?
We need to engage with people. We need to break the barrier. You know, there is a saying that, you know, Islam is a very good product, but Muslims sometimes are not good salespersons. So we need to be also good salespeople. You know, we need to allow people to come and see what we are. You know, even, you know, if we feel that journalists are not doing justice about us, you know, Muslims should talk to them, invite them, you know, try to have heart-to-heart talk. And I think, you know, we have to do our part, and then, you know, I believe that there will be some changes. So in New Zealand, we have that more probably because our communities are smaller. So we are more, you know, mixing, and probably some countries, they have big community and they're too busy with their own ethnicity, and they are not using their ability, effort, and talents to mix with others, to show other people that what is truly we are. We need to increase that part.
You go back to that we are different tribes so that we may know each other better. And I think also in wider engagement, Professor Cathcart said that the Muslim community doesn't have any representation in the media. In fact, I think we're less than 0.4% in the Muslim community in the media itself. So nobody's telling our story, so to speak, as well. Professor, going back to, you know, we need to come in towards the end of the show. If we analyze a lot of terrorist activities around the world, and I'm talking about the Christchurch incident, the El Paso incident, the Pittsburgh synagogue incident, all these terrorists point to an involvement of white supremacy. When you pick up the paper, however, and when I say involvement of white supremacy, it's not a conspiratorial theory. They've left manifestos to say this is the reason why they performed this act of terror. We read, again, as I've alluded to, multiple reasons for why people do these things. So, for example, the Daily Mail for the Christchurch attack blamed everything. They spoke about his childhood bullying. The Australian Mail talked about his addiction to computer games. The Times found that the killer's height was the root of all his problem because he was so short. They considered all of these things to be much greater than what they were talking about. In the use of language, fair-haired, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, angelic, these are all words that were used in the British press to describe the Christchurch terrorists. When we denote such words of whiteness as inherent goodness, and it's not capable of doing evil, do you think there's a real problem for our media in this country to call out white supremacy as a major cause of world terror? And are our press ignoring this fundamental issue and this fundamental cause of terrorism, Professor Cathcart?
Well, I don't think it would be fair to say ignoring, but I think I mean, one of the things that baffles me is that, you know, in a country, it's not what you would like, but it is kind of predictable that, you know, for example, after the 7/7 bombings in the UK, there should be, you know, I'm not saying there should be, but that there was some level of suspicion towards Muslims, and that people needed a period of adjustment, and they needed to be better informed about Muslims and so forth. So, you know, looking at where the threat is coming from and saying, oh my God, you know, what's that, is a kind of natural human fear instinct. But it's something that should be overcome, as Mr. Ahmed said, by information, by properly informing people, by engaging and reaching into the Muslim community and showing what it's really like. And you know, that will allay the fears and maybe help point the the concerns in the most appropriate direction. With white supremacists, there seems to be a reluctance to confront the very idea. Even now in the United States, you see it too. The extraordinary scale of this problem and the reluctance to say, look, what is going on? How many times, for example, in the UK and elsewhere, have we heard the terms radicalization? Who is radicalizing these people? And that is a way of blaming everybody in the Muslim community for what a tiny minority of fanatics get up to. Who is talking about radicalization of white supremacists? Who's looking for the processes by which they learn their creeds? It just doesn't happen, and I think that it's a failure that we're not addressing these things properly, not thinking about these things properly. And interestingly, in the UK, in the police, there is quite a strong move to focus public attention on white extremists, on far-right extremists. We have seen murders and violence and of course waves of hate crime. The police are very concerned about it. The security services are very concerned. They speak publicly about the need to address these things, but you don't see that carried over into journalism. And I think this is it's a sickness. It's something that needs to be addressed. Sorry.
The role and the responsibility of our leaders because of the language that they sometimes use.
I think that's also important. I think leadership is certainly important, and there's a desperate lack of it. But I'm a journalist. I think journalists have their responsibilities, and looking around you in modern Britain, the reflex that you identified, the business of spinning out the manifesto of this killer, it's incomprehensible to me that could be a reflex in those circumstances. It's just, they need to manage these things. They need to understand, all the kind of the positive stuff that comes from New Zealand that we hear now, as we've just heard. That's in short supply in Fleet Street, put it that way.
Yeah, and I just very, very quickly wanted to go through something another journalist said, Latifa Akay, who went on to the BBC 2 days after the Christchurch massacre, on the BBC of all places, and she was asked a question 2 days after the massacre, that did she feel that the Muslim community condemned acts of terror enough? As if it was a responsibility, collective responsibility for the Muslim community to apologize. We do not see the same again when it works in the other way.
No, absolutely not. I mean, there are so many ways you can package this, but the truth is that this is in the UK, the press industry, and I think the broadcasting industry is better, but it is heavily influenced by the press industry. But there are leading national newspapers which are simply unreconstructed when it comes to issues of race and religion. They just do not understand diversity. We come back to the point at the very beginning. They don't see diversity around them. I live in London, and the press operates from London, a hugely diverse city, and yet you'd find essentially a kind of the people producing the newspapers are essentially the product of a kind of apartheid system. It's an absolute disgrace. But this is not accidental. This is not just tradition carrying on. This is driven by attitudes, politics, and prejudice.
Thank you so much, Professor Cathcart. Coming to the final bits of the show, once again, it leaves me to say thank you so much, Jazakallah khair. And I just want some final thoughts now, first of all, from Brother Mohammed Thompson. Again, Jazakallah for joining us. If you can leave us with some of your final thoughts, please.
There's just a few things. What I believe has come out of the Christchurch terrorist attack is opportunity for us, and when I speak for that, all the Muslims. My brother Farid believes in this as well. that we've got a job to do now. There's a job to do. We have to pass the message, the good message, the proper message. And that message has to be through, first our example, being the best of the example of being a Muslim as we follow our beloved Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Brother Farid has been showing the way in that by, you know, showing that the love, the forgiveness and things like that. We have to also follow that. We have to then invite the non-Muslims to our communities, our centers, our homes and things like that. Show them what the true Islam is. Continue that on, because that's if something to be a legacy from this is to do that we have this opportunity, and it's not going to last forever, to continue that the work of the dawah, the follow-up, the showing how Islam is and how Muslims should act. And I think it has been, you know, in all intents and purposes, it is working, it's happening. You know, Voice of Islam is doing this sort of thing. Brother Farid is doing this through his numerous, and I don't know how he gets all the energy to go on all these talks and meetings and doing all this great work. Allah give him more strength to continue that, inshallah, and he builds a good team around him to be able to do that. You know, even just a little bit, go to the side a little bit, even the police here have now, one sister who's wearing the hijab here, they've designed a hijab for the police, and it's apparently it's the first in the world. Even the police in Leicester have got you know, patents or copies of it from this, because it was designed so they looked at a whole lot of different things, you know, the wickering of, so the sweating and things like that. If someone pulls on it, is it going to choke them? And, you know, because in the past they had to make their own and bring their own scarves along and things like that. So this has now become part of the New Zealand police kit, a hijab, part of it. So this is now, you know, what's happening in New Zealand, leading the way again. Little, you know, we talk about New Zealand leads the way in a lot of things. And this is another one where it's doing this sort of thing. And that's bringing inclusiveness, you know, not making it hard for the sisters who want to be police. And we want police women in there. We want, you know, of various nationalities to be able to work in the communities and that. So these sort of things help foster that relationship, that togetherness, you know, that we are one, they are us, you know, and we work together. And I think, again, this needs to not just be in New Zealand, it needs to be, the rest of the world needs to see this. And, you know, that's part of our job as Brother Farid, that we need to show this. I know you're doing it more than what I am and can ever do, because, you know, you've been able to go overseas a lot and do a lot of talks. And I know, yeah, the positive. Yeah, and that's it. It's showing the positive. We've got to look at the positive. We can't, if we keep dwelling on the negative, it's only going to make us sick and give us problems. So we have to look on the positive, you know, have our trust in Allah and move forward. Jazakallah khair for allowing me on this platform and for bringing me in, inshallah.
Brother Farid, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I want the Muslims in the world to remember the legacy, the lesson we have learned from 15th of March. First of all, these worshippers who were injured or martyred, they were peaceful worshippers. They were not criminals. They did not do anything wrong. They were peaceful worshippers, good citizens, good moral character people. So the world needs to remember that they were peaceful. But after the attack, again, they showed peace. They could have become angry and violent. They could have done something, you know, with violence. Even the rest of the Muslim world could have done violence, could have shown violence. But, you know, it is a fact, it is a truth that despite the massacre, the people in Christchurch, victim families, the injured people, they have shown that they are living peace, they are walking peace, and they are people with peaceful attitude. And from this, I hope that the world can learn a lesson that if Muslims are bad people or terrorists, then how come Christchurch Muslims And the all world Muslims, they did not do anything in retaliation. They showed peace from A to Z. The other thing I want to say about the Muslims, and I said these things in my khutbah today, that sometimes some people, they make a trap for us. What they do, they try to incite us so that, they expect that if we can get angry and do something angrily, then they can say, look, Muslims are bad people. Or sometimes they want to do something to scare us. And they think, which they misunderstand, they think if they scare us, then they can eliminate 1.5 billion Muslims. They completely misunderstood about that. So what we need to do, we should not be scared, because we are not criminals. We are peaceful people, and we need to sell our peace to others. We need to engage as much as we can. We need to be careful, but we need to continue our act of kindness, because the act of kindness can open many people's heart and they can see that what truly we are. I want to send a message to people who misunderstandingly hate us. I want to tell them that you are our human brothers and sisters. We love you from the bottom of our heart. We don't hate you, so you don't need to hate us, because the hate is not going to help you. It will raise your blood pressure high. It will take your sleep away. Why don't we come and sit down and have a cup of tea? And let us discuss about our issues, human to human. And then we can come to a common ground. And we all can contribute peace to this world.
Jazakallah khair. I think you're talking to an Englishman there when you mention a cup of tea. I think the embodiment of love, peace, and kindness you've encapsulated beautifully there, Brother FARID Ahmed. And also when you said Muslims being salespeople, I think you would win it Salesperson of the Year every year with your sentiments. Jazakallah khair for all of you for joining us. Thank you so much, Professor Cathcart. Thank you, Brother FARID Ahmed, for joining us from New Zealand, Brother MOHAMMAD THOMPSON. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you, everybody at home, for watching. It has been extremely moving. It has been heart-wrenching and tear-jerking for myself, but hopefully it has been inspiring. We have heard firsthand the carnage, the trauma that the acts of terror can perpetuate on people. We've seen the firsthand testimony of Brother FARID Ahmed, how when hate, ignorance raises its ugly head, it's the innocent and it's the peaceful people that pay the price for such carnage. That is why, as we've heard today, we must all take responsibility. We must all take responsibility. This is our world. We must all work together. We cannot wait for other people to change things. We must change things. We must get involved in civic engagement. We must get involved in dawah work. We must get involved in politics. We must get involved in the media. As Professor Cathcart says, nobody's going to write our stories. We have to be the authors of our stories. So we have to get involved. So once again, Jazakallah khair. We will end this show with remembering our brothers, our sisters, our sons and our daughters that we lost that day. Their images and their names will come up. They have gone to a better place. We pray for them and we pray for the loved ones that they have left behind. This is Shaka Adam Patel. You have been watching a MEN webinar, Remembering Christchurch. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.